So I'm going to talk to you today about writing up a senior project. There's generally these sections of the senior project. Now, sometimes they sort of move into each other, but there's definitely going to be some sort of abstract or executive summary to begin the project, usually an abstract. Then there's going to be an introduction. And the introduction and the background in the lit review sometimes become the same thing, but the idea that you're going to sort of tell them what you're going to tell them and then give a context. And then these three sections are definitely something we want you to include in your senior project. The design section, the methodology, and the results. And then you end with a conclusion, and then you should include some bibliography or references and an appendix, if that's necessary. So I'm going to go through each of these and sort of talk about the various things that should be in it and the idea of what it is I'm talking about when we talk about these sections. So then the abstract, it tells the reader what's in the report. Like, so someone could just pick up this paragraph with the abstract, which is usually a paragraph long, and understand what this report is about. So it needs to be super concise, really, really rich in information. It sometimes includes findings quantitatively, and then also there should be in a summary, like this report includes all of this. And we often recommend that you write this last, and that's because you really do need the full understanding of what is in the report and have completed it completely. So the next section, well, the other thing that could either be in addition to an abstract or in replacement of the abstract is an executive summary. And this is more of a business expression of the summary of the report. It's for the busy executive to read, and it's usually a little longer than the abstract, maybe a page, and it does it contains important conclusions. The idea is that if the executive trusts you and understands that you've done a good analysis, he doesn't need to read the whole report. He just wants to read what are the conclusions, and he'll just go to the bottom line and say, okay, do this. Because the senior project is an academic document, we often recommend an abstract instead of an executive summary. So when we talk about the next section, which is the introduction, this is a section that really describes what this report is about. Two things that are going to be important in here. The problem statement. What are you doing? What are you solving? What are you trying to address in this project? And then the organization of the report. There's some other things that sometimes are included in it, like where did this problem come from, who originated it, what company is it for, some kind of summary of methods that you used a design methodology, and then a little bit maybe about the deliverables, like what is the bottom line at the end of the report, what would somebody know, and sometimes you recognize which courses, not by number, but by name or by topic that you needed to complete the report. So it kind of gives an idea of what are the various concepts that are in this report. Definitely it's going to be the organization of the report, though. Make sure you end with that. Something like, this report begins with a literature review and then continues on to the design section, followed by methodology and results. I mean, something as silly as that. So in the background, which often comes right after the introduction, and it sometimes includes the literature review. Sometimes the literature review is separate from this. But what it does is it gives a context of the project. So the context is like a big picture. Where does this project fit into the entire company? If you did a project for a company, where does it fit in? Like, this company is a $10 billion company, has 5 divisions. The division that I did that the project was done in is in the supply chain division. And the supply chain is broken up into 3 departments. The area that I looked at was blah, blah, blah. That idea that you take a very big picture and you bring it down to where does this project situate. And also why it's an important problem. Maybe this problem occurs in various other areas of the company, and looking at this can be generalized to other areas. Now, the lit review also sometimes is in this, and that's because when we talk about background, we're really talking about 3 parts. One is the company background, like who is the company, where are they, what do they do, and then some theory, which is often included in books. So books often have sort of long-term theory that is used in some of the topics. Recent articles are new ways of thinking about it. So there might be a book on lean manufacturing, but there might be articles on lean manufacturing and new product development, some sort of specialized application of that. And we want you to include both of these in the lit review. So moving on to the literature review, it's like a research report. So if you can remember, you did a research report on, say, a country in Africa when you were in third grade or something. You got a whole bunch of references, and you summarized them and sorted them into sort of broad topic areas. That's pretty much what you're doing for this literature review. You're going to choose 3 to 5 areas that relate to your project. Maybe supply chain, cost estimating, ergonomics, biomedical industry. There could be various things you're going to put in there. And you should have at least 15 references. I don't know about the non-internet. That was sort of an old thing. What we mean is that they need to be peer-reviewed. And you need to end this, this will end with why this project is important in the context of the literature review. Some methods of doing the literature review, like I said, it's like a research. You start with these 3 to 5 areas. You brainstorm. You find books or find articles, and you can find books on Polycat, or you can find articles on the databases, the library databases, or Google Scholar. I would recommend the library databases, but Google Scholar is definitely one way to do it. You then organize it. Sometimes I recommend you put them on note cards. You kind of put the topics on note cards and then organize them, and then you write 5 to 10 pages double spaced as the lit review. This is an example of a lit review. Obviously you can't read it, but one of the most important things is it has headings and subheadings. So the lit review is general, but then those 3 to 5 topics are going to be headings or subheadings. You also need to cite references by name and date. Now that's an APA method of citing references. You can also use MLA, but you need to be consistent. So the next section is design. So we've gone sort of the introductory sections, which is intro, background, and lit review. Those should be done the first quarter in IME 481. So the writing of it is sort of broken up into 2 sections. This section, the design, this is going to be the biggest section of your report. And it really talks about the overall approach that you use to come up with your solution. So you have a problem for which you're designing a solution. And you want to describe how you did that design, how you got there, chronologically or step by step. So first of all, you need to choose which design steps you're going to be using. Now there's some that are, you can use DMAIC, you can use DAMES, you can use the systematic approach to facilities project. There's a lot of different methodologies that you can use in design. Generally they start with problem definition, understanding the situation, developing alternatives, evaluating alternatives, and then selecting. That's generally how engineering design goes, but you need to outline what it is you're going to do. So you're going to start with that, sort of decide how you're going to do it, and then subheadings that often follows the design steps. Or you can start with some kind of customer, maybe in the systems engineering approach, you start with customer requirements, pictures and diagrams of the process. So that's going to be your longest chapter. That's like what you think of as a senior project is really almost all within the design aspect. Methods. So what happens in methods is you actually have designed something in the previous chapter, and now you need to test it. You need to think about, how do I prove that this design is good? You need to do maybe a design of experiments. Maybe you have to have the user evaluate it. Maybe you're going to develop a prototype for which you're going to test some way. So you need to think about, what are the performance measures of the current state and the proposed state. So this problem you had was in the current state, and now you have a design solution that you have that is creating a proposed state, and you need to think about, how am I going to measure the difference in that to prove the validity of my design. So in this case, you're just talking about how you do it. You don't report any data here. You just describe how you're going to do it. And you need to describe it in enough detail that someone else can replicate it. This is kind of a short chapter. It's not a lot of stuff in it. It's just, this is how I went about designing the methods to evaluate my design. Results then follows after methods. This is how I designed it. This is the results. So you're going to then result the numbers. This is where you're going to talk about the proposed state and how it's different from the current state. You're going to have charts and diagrams talking about this, and you're going to summarize the main points of this data. Are these results expected? You also going to translate this in economic terms. Some senior projects have economics as a completely separate chapter, but it can be included in this chapter. The conclusion then, okay, so now what you're going to do is tell them what you told them. You summarize the report. What are the important implications? What did you learn about the subject? Refer back to the objectives you had in the introduction. And how do you satisfy the problem? References need to be either MLA or APA. It doesn't matter as long as you're consistent. You want to check library websites. Oh, there's also a lot of tools online that can help you do this bibliography. You need to alphabetize and cite in the literature review by name and date. Appendices, I would recommend including summary tables, graphs and pictures, illustrations in the body of the report, and everything else in the appendix. So anything that's like a lot of data would be in the appendix. But I think it's easier to read a report if the particular table or graph is within the body of the report. Always reference appendixes in the body. So if you have an appendix, you need to reference it somewhere, or it's not necessary to have it. Other tips, there's some senior project guidelines for formatting. There's specific title page and headings and subheadings. You need to cite others if you use an image, make sure you put that in there. Label all tables and figures and cite when appropriate. Have someone edit your report besides you. This is real important for me to do when I'm writing something. I actually can't see sometimes some of the mistakes I've made, so it's really important to have somebody else read it. This is also quite important. I think that if you don't pay attention to this, that it might come back. You might want to learn, you should use third person or passive voice when you're writing it. You shouldn't say a lot of times like, I did this, and then I did this, and then I did this, and then I did this. It should be referencing the project. Why was this necessary for the project? Use present tense unless something was done a long time ago. So the idea is that if something exists right now, like the layout is in the form of a U shape, that it's not it was in the form if it is in the form of the U shape. If you want to say data was collected, you're not collecting data right now, so you say data was collected. So you have to be careful. Opt for present tense unless it really seems appropriate to use past tense. Think of the audience as a junior in your major, so somebody who has that level of knowledge. And start and finish each chapter with an explanation what is included. So at the very beginning of the chapter say, in this design chapter, I outline the various steps in the design, ending with a complete picture of the design or something, in a layout. That would be important. So I hope that has helped you think about how to write the senior project.